landowners in South Maui. Alexander and Baldwin, who was in partnership with a large insurance company to develop what we now know as Wailea, and Cebu, which was the company that bought Ulapalakua Ranch lands further south that have become the area that we know as Makena, or Makena Resort. So these two large companies each had 1,500 acres, or I guess Makena Resort had 1,000 and Wailea had 1,500. And they said, we'll put in some money if we can get some water. So a joint venture agreement was signed in 1975. And based on the fact that the county planners thought that they had this 40 million gallons of water to play with, they said, well, let's just use 19 million of it, up to 19 million can go to these large resorts because they're going to have big needs. And the other half we'll keep for everybody else in Central Maui, everybody else in South Maui. That'll just be like the county's share. There was one person during the whole environmental review of this 1974 plan who wrote, and well, there were two people. There was Life of the Land, which was the first environmental group here in Hawaii. And they wrote and they said, this EIS isn't making a lot of sense. You're not really looking at, the water, you're looking at the transmission lines, and you need to look at the impacts to the water and everything that connects with that water. But the other set of comments was from one of the most respected hydrologists in the state of Hawaii. His name was Doak Cox, and he was born in Maui. He had a geology degree from UH, a master's degree from Harvard in hydrology. He was exempt from war service because he was such a valuable asset to locate water sources for the U.S. Geological Services all over the mainland to help the war effort. He came back to Hawaii. He worked for the Sugar Planters Association, so he really knew the plantation very, very well. His brother actually was on the board of directors of ACNS, Richard Cox. And he was a brilliant guy, extremely respected in his field. And eventually he got put in charge of this new Water Resources Center at the University of Hawaii. And for them, he wrote comments on this EIS about this proposed plan to use 40 million gallons of water from these two aquifers and use it for South Maui and Central Maui's growth. And he tried to warn these people. He said, there isn't 40 million gallons there. I'm sorry, your math is just not, it's not based on geological realities here. And no one would listen to him, even though he was kind of like the leading hydrologist of his day. They went, oh, well, they wrote him a long explanation. You didn't understand this, you didn't count on this. You know what? He was right. He was the only one who was right. All the other people that gave him advice were wrong. So we have a whole South Maui land use entitlements and water regime that is based on kind of a 20 million gallon a day mistake. That's the long and the short of it, but there's some other fascinating things that happened along the way. Eventually, the Central Maui Joint Venture Partnership was put together, a pipeline was installed, and it was completed around 1979, and South Maui had water. 3 more wells were drilled out near Wai'ehu, and yeah, there was water in those wells. They were good wells. It's just that there wasn't 20 million gallons a day of water in those wells. So next slide, please. So here's a quick timeline. The civic plan projected that the South Maui area by 1990 would need about 12 million gallons a day. But the 1974 study kind of had a different number. It said, oh, 1990, yeah, it's going to be 26.4 million gallons a day. Now, just for fun, does anyone know how much water our whole Central Maui system currently uses? Anybody in here that got that figure? Well, it's about 25 million gallons a day. So that's for all of South Maui, all of Central Maui, and Paia. So this number for South Maui alone was pretty off. And they estimated too that the Central Maui area would also need a tremendous amount, another 26 million gallons a day. And that in general, Central Maui is going to need 51.7 million gallons a day. I bring this up because, we're seeing a lot of projections right now about population, about water use and everything. And they ain't always necessarily so. So just, history tells us that sometimes people get it wrong and are way off. So, based on this, the county went ahead with its plans. It promised 19 million gallons a day to these resorts. Fortunately, next slide please, the resorts never built out as fast as they anticipated. But we did have quite a building boom in South Kihei, and some of you here, I'm sure, witnessed it. I know I witnessed a great deal of it, being here from the 80s on. And for a while, there had to be a moratorium because there just wasn't enough water to go around. 79 and 80, there was a moratorium on water meters in the South Maui area. But eventually there got to be, a pretty good supply. Next slide, please. And by 1990, South Maui also had over 50 private wells. The map there, the big map is kind of hard to see them, but the red dots and the yellow dots are all different private wells. Of course, the majority of these wells were for the big golf courses. Wailea Golf Course has 10 wells, and the McKenna Golf Course has 10 wells. But lots of condos have wells, individual homeowners have wells, mostly for irrigation. But there's a few wells in Kihei that actually are for municipal use as well. And the water is brackish, but it's treated. Next slide, please. So what happened to EL Aquifer? We had this joint venture plan. The wells were drilled, more wells were drilled. The pipeline went in. The pipeline was extended to go further out into McKenna. And what we found out 10 years later, we were starting to see that there wasn't this combined capacity of 40 million gallons a day. It was more like 20, and maybe that was even pushing it. Luckily, the hotel, the large resorts weren't using the 19 million gallons because it really wasn't there for them. And the EO Aquifer was experiencing stress. As early as 1985, the chloride levels were shooting up in a couple of the old wells and one of the new wells from the joint venture that was only 10 years old. So we're starting to see that maybe the EL Aquifer needs a different regime, and the State Water Commission, or actually, I think it was actually some concerned citizens proposed that the aquifer be designated a state water management area because there wasn't a water commission yet. And this is in 1986. Next slide, please. By 25 years after the Central Maui joint venture, the EL Aquifer's pumping reached capacity in 1995. They pumped over 20 million gallons a day average in 1995. You can remember a lot was going on in 95. Lots of hotels had just been finished. Lots of new condos were started. It was a busy time. In 96, the State Water Commission staff recommended designating the EL Aquifer as a water management zone. In other words, the state comes in and issues permits for everyone who wants to use it. In 1999, and of course the mayor and everybody said, oh, no, we don't need to do that. That'd be crazy. We'll take care of everything ourselves. In 1999, the folks from the original joint venture wanted to renew it. They said, well, yeah, it's expiring next year, but we want to re-up it because, we still haven't built out. And, but no one could find any accurate figures at the water department exactly how much water had already gone to these two large landowners. So it was a bit of a twist, and in the end, Maui Tomorrow actually had to sue over a decision that the Independent Board of Water Supply made. They agreed that they would renew this partnership for, I forget whether it was another 20 years or maybe just another 10 years. But it was absolutely illegal to do it because it had expired already by the time they wanted to renew it. So they were kind of cited in the courts. The county backed down, and the subject of renewing the water agreement went away. But in around 2001 or 2002, the folks from Maui Meadows Neighborhood Association, or maybe it was Maui Meadows Homeowners Association, they combined at some point. they asked the Water Commission to designate the Iao Aquifer one more time. And that was the petition that was successful. Next slide. So when you talk about aquifers, South Maui uses water from Iao, Waihe'e, and Kamoli aquifers, and you can see where they're located. Iao and Waihe'e are over, in central Maui, and Kamoli is where South Maui is. That's our native aquifer. So at that time, when the Iao Aquifer was being requested to be designated as a state water management area, there were no designated aquifers in all of Maui. So this was the first. And Earth Justice got involved, a group of citizens got involved, but the original petition came from here in South Maui from concerned citizens. And it was designated around 2004. Next slide, please. So here we're in the present. We see where we came from the past. So presently, South Maui uses 12 to 13 million gallons a day from Iao and Waihe'e aquifer, and that's the potable water supply for the most part. About 5 million gallons of that returns to the wastewater treatment plant, so that means the other 7 million is used for something that's not human use. It's not going through your bathtub, your sink, your washing machine, your swimming pool drain. It's being used for non-potable purposes. And then there's 20 golf course wells and dozens of private wells, and those are using about 3.6 million gallons a day from the Kamoli aquifer. Now that Kamoli aquifer was said by the state back far back as 1990 that it had 11 million gallons a day of capacity. Well, no one ever looked at it since then, and all the charts still say 11 million gallons a day, but hardly anyone except this one water consultant, Tom Nance, believe that that's true. He thinks it has 30 million gallons a day, but no one else agrees with him to speak of, and most people think it have a lot less than 11 million gallons a day. But right now, 3.6 million gallons is being used, 2.5 million gallons, so this would boost it up to about, a little over 6 million gallons. Is reserved for Hawaiian homelands, because Hawaiian homelands up in Kulamalka, some of them overlay this aquifer, and they would like to have some wells for irrigation if nothing else, especially if they can pump them with renewable energy. So they have a reservation. And then you have a couple of proposed luxury projects in Makena and Wailea area, and they're proposing to pump 1 to 2 million gallons, total on top of that. But climate models, the latest USGS story, study from last year, says that Kamoli aquifer is going to really have the lowest future recharge rate. So even though it is brackish water, pumping a lot of brackish water evidently has an effect on the overall health of the aquifer too, and how it can function. So we have a lot to learn about how these aquifers function. So it has been said in this study, there's a little chart in there, that the practical pumping yield might eventually, but not maybe in my lifetime, but by mid-century here, be lowered from 11 million gallons to around 6 million gallons a day, which would mean that we're pretty much using it, with what's planned and what's on board. Next slide. So getting into the future. That's why you're all here. I'm almost done. I hope I'm not boring anybody. But so 10 of the County Water Department's largest users in 2020, and this was the only year they made a chart for this, but were resorts in South Maui. Surprise, surprise. It's a desert, and you have tropical landscaping. The Fairmont Kealani and the Grand Wailea and the Four Seasons and the Andraz, and you name it, they're all very beautiful, but it takes a lot of water. Grand Wailea Resort alone, when we've gotten different reports of it, uses like 600,000 gallons a day, 0.6 million gallons, over 500,000 gallons a day. It's like 35 acres, but it uses a lot of water. And our water code in Maui, our water standards allows that much water for a resort. No other island allows any resort to use that much water in one property. It's just, they have a different standard. They have a standard of 4,000 gallons per acre. We have a standard of 17,000 gallons per acre in Maui. We're the only island that does that. So that's something that maybe could change, and we might free up a little water that could be used for other purposes. Next slide. So the search goes on for new water sources. Some of you might live in Maui Meadows or know people that live in Maui Meadows, but about 20 years ago, an exploratory well was drilled there up by the water tank on Upalakua Ranch land that's right above Maui Meadows. It didn't prove to have very good chlorides, and so it wasn't seen as practical to use as a water source. Next slide. The Maui County is also doing its own reports. It's 50 years later and new reports are being issued. Here's part of a 4-part series on a demand and capacity analysis for all of Central Maui and upcountry. Now these, full disclosure, these studies happened because Sierra Club and 2 other groups in East Maui challenged an EIS back in first 1992 and then in 2002. And the settlement for that challenge was the county had to do some really in-depth studies about what its options were to develop water sources for the future. So these studies, I don't know if they're public or not. They've been given to Sierra Club and our allies to review, but it would sure be nice if they're public. They have some very useful information in them, but they stop a little bit short of doing a complete analysis in some ways. All due respect to Director Stufflebean, he's doing a good job, but they kind of fail to acknowledge that some water is going to come from private systems. They just say, well, no, we're just assuming if it has, if it has a presence in the community plan, it's going to be built, and we're going to need to supply it water. But that ain't necessarily so. Some water is going to come from private sources in South Maui. It already does. Next slide. So these studies are expected to come to the conclusion that the most practical solution for finding, and the amount varies. It was 8 to 10 million gallons a day in 2002. Then it was 8 million gallons a day in the water use and development plan. Now I think it's 6 million gallons a day could maybe be found in Haiku Aquifer if another whole pipeline, 22-mile pipeline, was constructed, and a series of 8 to whatever wells were built and operated. As you can see, Haiku already has quite a few wells. And that's because no one in Haiku can get a water meter. It's not a matter of you just have to wait. It's just, there's no possibility that anyone can get a water meter. So you have to put in a catchment system or drill a well if you want water in Haiku. There are 400 people that are on a water waiting list, but the majority of them have no pipes near where they live, and the county makes them put their own pipes in, so most of them probably will not be able to afford hooking up even if there was a water meter available. Meanwhile, Haiku has 2 wells that this study characterizes as not pumped to full capacity because there's no demand for the water. Try figure. To my last slide. So the other thing that the county is talking about, and you'll see it in this year's budget if you're one of those people who follow the county budget, is using a reverse osmosis desalinization process. And what that consists of is you go to an area where there's brackish water, like maybe North Kihei, and and lots of empty space, and you install this membrane system that the water is pumped up, it goes through the membrane, and it takes a lot of energy to put it through the membrane, and so desal used to be considered cost prohibitive, but a lot of places are doing desal now. California is, Oahu I think has its first desal plant, and a number of them are using renewable energy to cut down on the huge energy costs. However, that being said, you do need to pump more water. So I think that the mixture is like 1/3, 2/3 or something like that. In other words, if you wanted 1 gallon of water, you'd have to pump 2 gallons of water. And so when you get to the idea that you need to produce 1 million gallons of water a day, then that starts adding up, that it's 2 million you have to pump in order to get that 1 million treated. So maybe they'll have better technologies where it's a closer ratio, but there could be huge demands on the Kamoli aquifer, or maybe the wells would be far enough over that they would be in the Paia aquifer, which part of, along Mokolele Highway is the Paia aquifer, not the Kamoli. So we'll just have to see what the study has to say. It's supposed to come out, I think, this year and be presented to the council, and there's more feasibility funds in the budget. So that's a quick overview of past, present, or future. And last slide, and take any questions that people have.
Okay, thank you, Lucienne. All right, before we get to questions, we're going to have Rob Weltman, who was a big part of creating the South Maui Community Plan, talk for a few minutes about the way that they were looking at water and infrastructure. Oh, a hand for Rob Weltman, please.
Kako o lakabat ko ina o kadona ba o ka kumike ho tayo ulano ka papa ola do Maui Hama. So my name is Rob Weltman, and I'm the chair of the Community Plan Advisory Committee for the South Maui Community Plan. And the way that works is that first the planning department, the Maui Planning Department, came up with the proposal for the next 10-20 years worth of South Maui planning. And then a 13-member Community Plan Advisory Committee was appointed by the County Council, including me. But I'm not the only one in this room, actually. There's also I was the chair, but Daniel Kanehela was the vice chair, he's here, and also Verna, and also Mike. So I think we have at least 4 members of the CPAC here in this room. So the CPAC started about a year and a half ago and more than that now. Spent almost a year working on this, had almost a year's worth of meetings and lots and lots of people participating, and came up with a plan. And the plan consists of these parts, as you could say. There's a descriptive part, just describing South Maui. There are policies which say what things should be taken into account when development decisions are taken or granted. There are maps which show the intended land use for each part of South Maui. And there are actions. These are things which we're asking the various departments to do. And South Maui goes from Maalaea down to Ahi, Kinawa, even further south than Makena. This is from the descriptive section talking about water in South Maui. This was written by the planning department, and the planning committee did not change it. And it acknowledges that we don't have much water down here, and we're going to need more, and that's going to be a challenge. One thing it doesn't mention is that not only do we not have a lot of water, but it's actually getting worse because of climate change. The amount of water available through precipitation and aquifer recharge is being reduced. So we handed off our work in the end of 2023 to the Maui Planning Commission, which is the next step. And they had 6 months to process it, but they got an extension, so they'll probably finish in February or March this year. And it talked about how it consists of these 4 parts. So far, the Maui Planning Commission, they've been meeting twice a month on this, and they've worked on items 1 to 3. And they'll get to the actions, the last part, probably very soon. So some of the policies and some of the actions that are in the plan that we adopted have to do with water. There are actually not a lot of them that directly say this is how much water we have, this is how much water we need, but they talk a lot about things like reusing wastewater and reducing waste, things like that, which affect water use in South Maui. So these are the ones I try to pull out all both the policies and the actions which have to do with water, directly or indirectly. So the first one is not just about water, but it basically says we should not be doing more projects, more development without having infrastructure in place that can handle them. Infrastructure is both things like roads, but also things like water, wastewater treatment, electricity, all the things that you need for people to live, or for businesses or companies to be able to function in a new area, new development. And then we put in this requirement too that new hotels and any existing hotels which are expanded should be water neutral. In other words, they should have ways to reduce their water consumption so that they don't provide a net drain on water supply to South Maui. So this is what happened so far in the Maui Planning Commission. They struck the first one, and the second one they changed to the extent practical, which is something they did almost throughout. So you'll see time and again they'll say, well, we had put required, they'll say required to the extent practical, which means maybe, maybe not. In the area of ready and resilient systems, we said that managing and preserving South Maui's water sources should be the highest priority, above all else, as we said. We said that new developments in South Maui should, even including affordable housing developments, should reuse recycled water to the extent possible. We said that we should use gray water, recycled water in county parks and community gardens. We added this when legal and safe because currently it's not allowed very much. The state does not allow using gray water. We hope that will change, and when it changes, we should use it. And we wanted to amend the Maui Island Plan and the Community Plan so that there would be possible to build wastewater collection systems and reuse the water in Ma'alaya for irrigation, so they don't put it into injection wells, and so they don't need to consume potable water for irrigation. So what happened here is that they struck that above all else. And otherwise they left most of this. They added greenways to the third one, but that's not bad. The next area where we talked about this in the community plan was eliminating wastewater injection wells in Ma'alaya by building a wastewater treatment plant there so that we could not put that water in the ground and then have it flow out to the ocean and pollute the ocean, but rather be able to reuse that for irrigation. And also that we throughout South Maui should not be putting water into injection wells. This is the South Maui Wastewater Recycling Center, but rather expand the reuse of recycled water for irrigation in South Maui. And thirdly, that we should explore other ways to reuse water, such as scalping facilities like in Maui Meadows, scalping or packet plants, other ways to process the wastewater in Maui Meadows and other places, which is currently going into cesspools or where they feel it would be too expensive to carry that to the South Maui Wastewater Recycling Center. For those things, they struck the first one, wastewater recycling facility in Ma'alaya, and they left the other ones. And I was watching the video from that meeting, and they totally misunderstood. They thought that 2324 and 2325 were talking about the same thing, but they're not. First one's talking about a new recycling water recycling center for Ma'alaya. The second one was talking about reuse of wastewater, which is already being produced. And then finally, we have in section 2.4, Mauka to Makai watershed management, a bunch of things. We wanted to have significant buffers to protect the water that's flowing down from Auca. We wanted nature-based water solutions for managing runoff, rather than just building more concrete culverts and carrying stormwater runoff into the ocean. And we wanted to focus on restoration and conservation efforts for the area above the highway, so that the land would be better able to soak up and recycle the stormwater runoff. And we wanted to protect coastal water and the nearshore water marine environment by requiring low-impact development. And the this one we wanted buffers for the for all the gulches, and the nationally established gold standard for that is 100 feet of buffer next to the gulches, because gulches change a little bit, and having space next to them is important for several reasons: for flooding, for contamination, but also just for safety of the building itself. And there was some discussion on, well, which gulches? It can't be all gulches. So we said, okay, we'll take all the gulches which are named by the Department of Aquatic Resources. We call them out here. And we wanted them to stay in open space also for new developments. And also to prioritize native plants as a method of absorbing stormwater runoff. So after a lot of debate, the Planning Commission decided to strike the names and just refer to the map that they had. But they also added a book, they added KOKO, which is good. And they said that these gulches must be called out in the final approved subdivision maps. So not too bad. Not too bad here. So then we go on to actions, and the Planning Commission has not gotten to them yet. They're just barely finishing now with the Planning Commission, and they will probably be starting on the actions very soon. So these are the things that we talked about there. And they come back to actions to more recycle the water that we have is coming out of wastewater, to do a pilot study on resalinization or desalinization, to look into whether it's possible to refine the wastewater additionally beyond R1 to R0 so it becomes potable, to update the drought management plan and implement priority actions, to extend R1 lines so we can use them for irrigation beyond Wailea, to restore streams that have been diverted, to implement a regional stormwater park in the land above Kihei, above the highway. What that means is that it would be collecting stormwater, but in the meantime, when it's not being used for emergency purposes, it would actually be a park, it would be a recreational area. It's something they do in other places, but not in Hawaii yet. To implement the South Hawaii Watershed Plan, which has been on the shelf for years now, and to establish a watershed advisory group, which would include people both from Mauka and from Makai, because we can't solve this problem either in Mauka or Makai alone. And that's in the works, that's actually happening. So that's it. So they haven't gotten to the actions, that's where things stand. I just want you guys to know what we worked on, what things we looked at, and also to stay involved, keep an eye on the Planning Commission, keep an eye on the County Council when it gets there. Thank you. Aloha.
Thank you, Rob. At the end of the meeting, we will talk about how you can help us communicate what we need as far as water and other infrastructure for South Maui. For right now, if you have a question for Lucianne or Rob, let me know. Yes.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Lucianne. Mark Grayson.
Oh, hi, Mark.
Hi. I'm curious about the desalination plants. Can they desalinate ocean water too besides the...
Oh, they can, yes.
Is it more expensive?
More
involved?
expensive, yeah. So many of the plants The California plants, they're desaling ocean.
Yeah.
But some of the other plants are doing what's called reverse osmosis, or RO, and it just saves on energy, starting with less salty water.
Thank you. And I have a question. How long are we expecting that water restrictions will last? Do we have any idea?
You're asking the wrong person, you know. I think that the director would be happy to answer that if you
Okay.
email him. He's a very forthright person, so, but.
And Lucian, if you could pull the microphone up.
Oh, sorry, yes. I think the director would be happy to answer that if you emailed him, because he's a pretty forthright person. But in general, they usually have some criteria which they use, and the criteria are how many wells they have that are off, that may be down and need repair, the levels of stream flow that's coming into the treatment plant. In other words, you can't provide what isn't there in your system. So if the system levels are down, they have to wait till they build back up before they can lift the restrictions. It's just like you would do if
Sure.
you know, we're stuck in a desert with a jar of water, you know?
So as
Yeah.
the rainy season progresses, it should lighten the load and make it more likely.
Well, that would help the stream part, but very little stream water is used for the Central Maui
Okay.
system. Only a maximum of a little over 3 million gallons a day is used. The wells, they're experiencing chloride problems with several of the wells, according to what Director Stuffel being told another group I was sitting in. Not all of them, but with several of them. And that means they can't pump them as much, and then they've had to do repairs on some of the wells too.
Okay, thank you. Here's another question.
Hi, George Stoddard. I'm just wondering how these developments do get the permission to build these huge, potential, is it 800 or 400 homes? And is it just like if I wanted to do it, they just give you a check, or do they even investigate the water aspect? And like, are they gonna do zero-scaping on these? I see them by Maui Nui. I just went to Maui Nui to play golf there the other day. They're already tearing down all the trees there and getting ready to do the luxury homes on the north end of Maui Nui. And I mean, I don't know what they're gonna landscape there. I mean, I was surprised, whoa, it's happening. How do they get permission to do it?
You make some very good points. Well, permission comes from our Department of Public Works. It comes from the, folks that do the special management area, the coastal review. And so there's permits people get from the Planning Commission. There's, if they need to change zoning, they need a permit change from the county council. And all those questions are asked. I hate to sound jaded, but I think that people that, own large sections of land and want to, realize more money from them, often just say whatever they think that the people who give them permits want to hear, and then they don't do it later on. And, or they do some form of it, but not enough to really address the problems that people were worried about and that supposedly were going to be addressed. And that's why we have, everything gets permits and says they're taking care of all the drainage impacts. Every year we have flooding. Well, if everyone was taking care of all the drainage impacts, I don't think we would have that kind of flooding. Everyone takes care of their traffic impacts, and we sit in traffic every day. So, there's some disconnect there. And what this general plan advisory group was trying to do was like learn from the mistakes of the past and use stronger language. And so it's kind of sad that then our own planning department doesn't want to learn from the mistakes of the past and says, oh no, we don't need that. That language is going to be hard to enforce. We need just more flexible language.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll be-
I'd like to say too that so a number of the very large developments in South Maui, they say that they're going to be using wells. They say that they have wells on their own land. But you can't just keep pulling more and more water from wells. That water has to come from somewhere. and the and as Lucian says, the quality of the water in those wells is declining, and if you keep pulling more water, it's going to decline even more. So that it's not really a solution.
Yeah, most projects have to do some level, either they have to do a special management area report, or they have to do an environmental assessment. And the people like Rob and I read these things, and sometimes our head spins and we go, well, how could that work out? And you write comments, but the people who really need to read them and say, they need to be like Mr. Cox and say, you're basing this on incorrect information, and you really shouldn't count on it because it's not going to happen. We need some people like that working, in the planning department and public works and reviewing things and being willing to say, gosh, we need a better solution here.
Thank you. Here's another question or comment.
So to the gentleman you was referring to, the Calvi trees by the Hilton. Yeah.
Really, they're just, well, not the ones in blue down, they're cutting them down for the nice new lots that are gonna be up there
Is that?
between the high school and the golf course. It's like getting.
Oh, that would be Malka, yeah.
Yeah,
That would be Malka.
It's the high-tech park area
It's the
that you're
high-tech
talking
park.
to, yeah?
No, the north of that.
Yeah, but I mean, north,
Yeah.
north of the golf course there,
Yeah,
yeah.
and it's, I was just like, whoa, it's gonna be a nice view lot, like it has a view, and, I heard that it was gonna happen, but I thought that was like, year or something.
I'm on a bird rescue, sorry.
So, yeah, I don't know, I wanna carry little signs, and I don't know how you slow it down, how you slow it down.
Well, it does help if organizations like KCA keep people informed when there's public hearings. I know some people say, well, they don't listen to us, but actually, people do get listened to quite a bit. I wouldn't assume that at the get-go. It's always good to come and share, and especially if you have firsthand knowledge, if you've observed a place for years and years and you know what happens there, it's good to share that,
Okay, thank you. We have another question?
So I'm a little bit confused. You mentioned that in your slide you said we shouldn't really do any new development until the infrastructure is in place. That seems rational and sane, and it was struck. Why was it struck?
Just so you know, Lucien is not able to wave a magic wand, nor is Rob. And it is a whole process. Go ahead, Rob.
Yes, I was just watching like I said, the videos today from Hawaii Planning Commission. I was kind of shocked. So what happened was, someone said, well, this was in the 1998 Kihei Makena Community Plan. No development without prior or concurrent infrastructure. And nothing happened. It wasn't respected. So let's just strike it. That was the discussion. That was the decision.
And you should know that a lot of people and organizations are working to get the county council and the Maui Planning Commission to work with us to have infrastructure that matches development. It's an ongoing conversation, and we're pushing very hard for that kind of thing. All right, here's another question here, and then
Aloha, I'm Brandy Corpuz. Hi, Rob and Lucien.
Hey, Brandy.
Hi.
How's a girl?
I'm happy to be here. This is my first Kihei Community Association meeting. However, I was involved in the CPAC testifying, following it, trying to advocate for many of the things that we're talking about tonight. One thing I wanted to say is that the plan that was created that I last was involved in or saw from the CPAC is being totally gutted. And I would like for everybody to know that and get out there and give your testimony for the things that are important to you. And also, I wanted to ask you, Lucien, or both of you guys, because you both work in water and have talked about water tonight, how much do you think the removal of all of our trees impacts the amount of water that our aquifers do?
Well, I'm gonna let Rob jump into this one here. He's Mr. Tree.
it's really a combination of a lot of bad things that have been happening. Just a lot of giving up the knowledge and experience and the traditions that kept Maui and Hawaii a more balanced environment prior to colonization, prior to the sugar plantations, and prior to ranching. And I'm not saying necessarily that those are bad things, but it's just that they were done in a way that left the island devastated. They removed the vegetation that kept the soil in place. They removed trees that absorbed moisture and they released moisture, so they kept the air decent. And I think our whole climate has changed because of that.
Yeah.
And we can't change that back overnight. We can probably never change it entirely, but I think that is a very important point that we all need to work on, is how can we restore some of the both ground level and especially trees, vegetation on Maui to help restore both our climate, our weather, and our water. I mean, I read somewhere that, I think it's maybe in the community plan intro, that from the 50s until the 90s, the amount of water precipitation in East Maui, which is the huge source of water, dropped by like 50%. And that's not coming back. That's climate change. So we need to do our part on Maui, and we can't stop climate change, but we can do, I think, a lot to at least mitigate it here.
Thank you.
You know, there's a wise saying that the rain follows the forest. When you need rain, you need forest. And all of us, I think, are very, aware of the infrastructure we need every day. We need water to come out of our taps. We need, our plumbing system to work. We need roads so that we can get to places. But we need the green infrastructure. We need the services that are our forests, our trees, our gardens, our wetlands. All of these natural areas, whether they look dry or wet, are performing services. And there's all these, talk to the people in Kealia National Wildlife Refuge. They're into all the microorganisms beneath the soil and how they're all working together, and we don't even see it on the surface. So there is this whole web of life that we need to support and need to respect.
All right, one last question.
So I went to water meetings all over the island for 10 years, and it became my understanding that when you dig a well in a lower area and take water out of that well, it's taking water from the upper areas. So when we talk about miscalculations of the amount of water that's available, I feel like that's a really big part of it. That digging wells in Kihei is like that because they say like the lava rock is so porous, and so basically I'd like for us to all be really familiar with those maps, where it shows the watershed underneath and how that middle bubble of water that keeps the stability of the island should there be an earthquake, which is over 50% depleted and polluted. Like that I have come to understand, and I was wondering if you heard the same thing, that drilling wells in low areas takes from these upper sources and is part of the miscalculation problem.
Well, that's a great question with lots of parts. I'll try to be brief. A very great man who was head of the U.S. Geological Service for the whole Pacific region, William Meyer, who I had as a mentor learning about groundwater. He was a PhD hydrologist and a PhD engineer, and he said, no one understands how water really moves. We think we have theories about it, and and then we find that there's an exception to the theory. He says it's a mysterious force. We try to make it fit in two-dimensional models, and it's actually three-dimensional. So just starting with that basic, hydrological perspective, what I can say is every well that is drilled does connect with water that is below it and above it. And we do not fully understand all the time exactly how it connects. Now, I've been heartened, there's a young, bright hydrologist who works a lot on Kauai They are mapping their groundwater over there in certain sections. They want to see where it's located, where it travels, where it goes. And I think that would be a fabulous investment here in Maui if we could find some funding and look at some areas where we're proposing wells and actually try to, they do a series of small wells that are like little test holes, and they map the groundwater and its characteristics. So the more that we can find out, the more intelligent we could be. People have been drilling wells for millennia. I visited wells in Africa that were 2,000 years old, and the same family, descendants are still using them. They're hand dug into the earth. People have to go down in layers and hand buckets up. So wells are part of our infrastructure in terms of there are natural places where springs come up and make little wells. It's not bad to drill a well per se, but we really need the best knowledge before we tap into what we don't know about and what we can't see.
All right. Thank you very much. A big round of applause for listening. All right. I'd like to introduce, if you don't know, our County Councilman, Tom Cook. Tom Cook was just reelected, a big hand for him. Look, it's a public service to get up and try and deal with all of these issues. And he's working on a way to get more water through reusing R1 intelligently, and he's going to talk to you about that for just a couple minutes.
He said my time's up. Aloha, everybody. I feel like I want to introduce myself briefly by saying, during the election, some of the stuff I read, I'm going to go, damn, I wouldn't vote for that guy. And I'm just saying social media and stuff. So I am available to talk to anybody. I lived off the grid for 35 years, sold property to my son in Kapapalua. He still lives off the grid. I mean, it's like, you don't know me. And labeling me as, quote, a developer and all the different stuff is inaccurate. I'm not being defensive, it's my introduction. I welcome you to just talk with me and to get to know me. The good news, and the reason I was invited to speak, in my last term, we have been working with environmental management for the wastewater, and we've had meetings at my office in Kihei, our office in Kihei, with the major landowners, the ranches, the owner of Wailea Golf Course, the director of water supply, director of environmental management, and about how we can expand the infrastructure for R1 water. We put $500,000 into the budget last year for a preliminary engineering report, excuse me, to get the water from the wastewater plant to the hotels. Previously, the plan that had been looked at repeatedly was running it down the Pi'ilani Highway, and it's about $1,000 a foot to dig through rock and put in a pipeline. So it was deemed to be, one, prohibitively expensive, and the ranches had been looking at another option that I got excited about, which is taking the R1 water, piping it up Mauka on their properties, and like 3 million gallon reservoirs. I won't get in the weeds, but you have a little challenge of how big a reservoir can be before it becomes a dam and all this other complications. So it's better to have a lot of small ones. Getting it up to a higher elevation and then piping it with gravity down. Wailea Golf Course was awesome. All of the landowners, so I just say, we are fortunate that we have a handful of large landowners, Mauka and Kihei or Kulakai, because they are stewards of the land, like the Halekla Ranch, Ulupalakua Ranch. They do care, and they're willing to help. Some of the pipelines could be on top of the ground, variety of things, but I'm getting in the weeds. I don't think much of that was spent in this last year, the $500,000. I'm going to continue to pursue it. The other aspect that is underway that is funded and is part of the existing CIP, Capital Improvement Project, is utilizing the R1 water and running it north to Bear, who are currently using potable water for their seed crops. And it'll also go to Kalaniakoi School. So going north is in process, underway, that will use it. I get excited because part of the pushback to me with my ambition and goals was being told, you know, we don't have limitless R1 water, and we can't, and I'm going like, that's the plan. We should in my opinion, we should overbuild infrastructure to be proactive, farsighted, and it's expensive, and we need to know who's gonna pay for it. A lot of the homes that people rally against, part-time residents, they can pay the taxes, and it's like, I don't know how you guys feel, but having a roommate that's never here and pays half the rent isn't all bad. So I'm just saying that collectively as a community, working together, open hands, open heart, and being genuine, we can and will take care of our community, provide for our children, and not make big mistakes. We will make mistakes, but hopefully we won't be catastrophic. The Kamaole Aquifer, all of the wells are at 599 feet because of the Upcountry Community Plan. Those have chlorides. If it goes up more, it won't. And I know that my time's up. One other thing, if I may, the flood control that is being done in the Kalanikoy Gulch and the North Kihei, by doing retention basins Mauka, it is the opportunity to mitigate the volume of the water coming down, mitigate the sediment, and also recharge the aquifer. We're getting millions of gallons of water that's coming down. It can stay up there and percolate into the ground and be able to irrigate from it. There are solutions. I mean, I'm not a developer, but I am a builder, and I see solutions to our challenges, and I'm grateful to be in this position to try and implement some. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. All right, now we're going to show a video that touches on some of the topics we've been talking about. It's a 11-minute video, and when you're ready, please show it. South Maui with the Pialani Highway and South Kihei Road. As you can see, all of South Maui is one big cul-de-sac. All 40,000 plus residents and tourists have one way in and out of South Maui, and that is called the North Kihei Choke Point, where the Pialani meets the Veterans Highway. There's a second choke point in the Pialani at Lipoa. So here we have a stoplight at Lipoa, we have another stoplight at Piakea. During peak usage, traffic backs up behind both of these stoplights. And also, when one of the stoplights turns green, the other is often red. Recognize that? Not traffic, causing traffic to get congested even further. So these are some current Kihei traffic issues. There are two choke points that exist now. Only one emergency egress for all of South Maui's 40,000 plus people, and current infrastructure is already insufficient for peak usage on the Pialani. Now let's consider upcoming development. One of the first developments is down south called Honuaula, or what's better known as Wailea 670. And they're planning on building about 1,000 units. Then there's Ledcor. All of these red areas, they own all of the land and are planning on building about another 1,000 units. Then there's McKenna Mauta, further south, with about another 1,000 units planned. So if you take Wailea 670, Ledcor, and McKenna-Malka, over 3,000 units in South Maui added with no solution for the 2 choke points further north in Kihei. Consider the Lapoa choke point. If we add 3,000 new residences to South Maui and have just 10% of those cars on the road at peak traffic times, that's 300 more cars trying to get through the Lapoa choke point. It's completely unworkable. And then there's a new development plan here, which is called the Pialani Promenade, and it has 100 acres between the high school down here and Okai Road. They're planning commercial development and residences. And all of it is going to jam up at this stoplight at Keono Ulu Street. This is going to create even further congestion along the Pialani. Further developments in the planning stages in North Kihei are the Kihei-Malka project and the Lapoa project, adding approximately another 1,000 homes to North Kihei. Plus, there are many others not named already in the works. When you look at this picture, there are 4,000 plus new residences in the pipeline for South Maui, which can easily add 1,000 more cars during peak usage to the South Maui cul-de-sac, jamming traffic. So let's consider some proposed solutions. One of the first solutions for South Maui traffic is the north-south collector road. This is going to take traffic from the Pialani and South Kihei Road and allow traffic flow all along North Kihei when completed. This part in dark green is already completed. The next phase in light green is currently planned, and there is a $25 million grant from the federal government to help in its completion. This part in orange along Kenaleo Road is not currently planned, and in yellow to connect it to the Veterans Highway, there is no plan. The north-south collector road will allow a significant reduction of traffic congestion off of both the Pialani and the South Kihei Road. Let's consider again the 3 major developments of 3,000 plus residences in Wailea and McKenna. There's a third choke point that's going to be created at Kilohana and Okalani. Here's Kilohana Drive, there's a stoplight. Here's Okalani Drive, there's a stoplight. The Pialani Highway goes from a 4-lane road to a 2-lane road south of Kilohana. Right now, traffic backs up during rush hours because it's a 1-lane road each way. If we add thousands of more units south of Kilohana Drive, that's easily 200 to 600 more cars backed up on 1 lane at Okalani and Kilohana. Wailea 670 agreed years ago to widen the Pialani to 4 lanes before starting to build their 1,000 more residences. Now they are asking the county council to make the state responsible for widening the road. Simple solution is we need Wailea 670 to do what they promised and widen the Pialani before the start of any new building. Another major solution to support development in South Maui is the Kihei-Malka Road. This road will wind from Kanani in the south up to the Veterans Highway, providing another major point of emergency egress to South Maui. The idea is it will be built in phases. The developers will be responsible for building their parts in their developments in red, and the state and county need to build the north part connecting to Veterans Highway and the south part connecting to Kanani Road. The Kihei-Malka Road, as you can see from this overview, will make a huge difference for daily traffic flow and emergency egress for all of South Maui. Another way to support development and infrastructure in South Maui is to consider changing choke point stoplights to roundabouts. Federal traffic studies show that roundabouts are safer, more efficient, and cheaper to maintain than their signal-controlled counterparts. They reduce injury collisions by 75%, fatal collisions by 90%, and delays by 89%. They keep traffic moving, and they continue to function normally during power outages. The South Maui Community Plan is another important part of the solution for development and infrastructure in South Maui. 13 people were appointed by the county council. They worked with the planning department and held public meetings for 1 year to develop a plan for the next 10 to 20 years for South Maui. They had over 200 residents testify, and they incorporated 35 proposals from locals into the South Maui Community Plan. The point to be made here is that the Kihei Community Association and the South Maui Community Plan is not anti-development. We know that people who already live here, they want and need more affordable housing. And people that don't live here obviously want to move to paradise. And businesses like restaurants and retail want and need more customers. Planned, coordinated development is good. Piecemeal, uncoordinated development is not. The South Maui Community Plan includes plans for growth and development and uses specific language that infrastructure like roads are required to be built along with developments, not encouraged and not if feasible. The planning department is currently suggesting language that weakens the South Maui Community Plan by changing requires roads to be built to encourages roads to be built, and is presenting proposals that would let developers like Wailea 670 skip roads that they had agreed to, like the widening of the Pialani. Now, there are other development infrastructure issues not covered in this video. There's fire safety, like getting a base yard for fire equipment in South Maui. There's water issues. We are currently on water restrictions. There's affordable housing. Most families cannot afford $1 million plus homes. There's beach parking issues, and sea level rise effect on homes and roads needs to be considered. But South Maui is asking for these things. First, absolutely no piecemeal development approvals. All projects must be considered in how they fit together and affect all of South Maui. Second, the planning department, county council members, and the mayor's office keep the South Maui Community Plan intact without weakening it. Third, we want developers to be required to do their fair share of new roadways. They can't be expected to do all the new roads needed in South Maui, but they must be required to do their fair share. Fourth, we want to create plans for changing choke point stoplights to roundabouts. Fifth, we want the north-south collector road next phase to be moved forward with eminent domain now, and plans made to finish the north phase all the way to Veterans Highway. Sixth, the Pialani must be widened to 4 lanes south from Kiloana. And finally, the Kihei-Mauka Road, another major point of egress from South Maui, be started before we add thousands of new homes. Together, we can work to build a better South Maui. Thank you. Can you turn up the lights, please? All right, so we only have a few minutes left, but this video kind of fits with the water discussion earlier. Infrastructure is needed with development. We're going to have development, but we need the infrastructure to match it. It is one of the things that the Kihei Community Association is fighting for pretty much every month. We're talking to our politicians, we're talking to everyone, we're going to county council meetings, Maui Planning Commission meetings, we're testifying, we're seeing what we can do. So, we want your help. We have a new team called the South Maui Voice Team. And if you have not signed up for this, we're gonna pass out sign-up forms. What will happen is if you sign up for this, we're gonna ask you to spend maybe a half an hour, maybe an hour or so a month. You'll get one email from us. It will explain what the issue is. It will tell you the talking points to share in an email or in person, and tell you when and where to do it, right? So that's the South Maui Voice Team, and it is available to anyone. You do not need to be a member of the KCA to sign up for that team and help out South Maui with once a month speaking and raising our voice for a better South Maui. So if you are interested in joining the South Maui Voice Team, you'd raise your hand and we will pass out the sign-up forms, and you'll help us out even further. Hands, anyone?
Bring it on.
You can kind of see what we're dealing with, right? I mean, it's a lot and it's important, and these things need to get addressed. So Audrey here is passing out the forms. They will be in the back, and you can sign up on your way out. We don't have time for questions. We will have other meetings on this part of the infrastructure needs, affordable housing, roads, all that kind of stuff. We are going to share what's happening and keep you updated, and keep asking for your help. So that is it for tonight. Thank you very much, and we will see you next time.
No, I posted it because I had it on my calendar. But Lucy was like, did a whole maps yeah. She said, they were saying numbers there. So she talked a little bit about that, but yeah, the floodplain stuff and the wetland stuff. Wow.